Instead of death, which is what we deserve, the Lord has in turn given us life and purpose in him. He has forgiven our sins. He has shared with us the riches of his glory. I mean, I don't know how many of us stop and really recognize that we have received a whole lot more than we deserve. I don't know how many of us are at that point where we are grateful for the fact that we have not only have we not been treated as we deserve, because that alone would be a blessing, but he has also given us what we don't deserve. We don't deserve life. We don't deserve purpose. We don't deserve forgiveness of sins. We don't deserve the riches of his glory. But he, through his mercies and grace, has given all of these to us. And so Paul's question then was, how should we respond? And he tells us we should present our bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is our reasonable service. In the sacrificial system, you offered dead stuff. Yes. So whether it be a dead goat or a dead cow or a dead lamb, but at the end of the day, they're dead, put on the altar, killed, put on the altar. Here, we are being told to present a living sacrifice. The first picture of a living sacrifice that we see in scriptures would have been Isaac. Put on the altar alive, living sacrifice, came off the altar alive. But for the sacrifice, he was put on alive and he remained alive on the altar. Isaac, of course, was a prefigure of Jesus Christ. And so we see there the beloved son, the promised seed being sacrificed. And of course, Jesus, the promised seed, also being sacrificed. And then we are now called to follow that figure. All right, and so we are now called to be a living sacrifice. And the sacrifice is called living, first of all, because it's brought to the altar alive. Yes, it goes on the altar alive. And it is living because it stays alive on the altar. So it means now that the sacrifice is an ongoing sacrifice. It's not a one-time thing. We are required to live a sacrificial life, a life of sacrifice. Yes, and so we're required to climb upon the altar willingly, like an Isaac did, like a Jesus did. We are to climb upon the altar willingly, and we are to stay up there willingly, like an Isaac did. Isaac could have gotten off the altar if he wanted to. He was a big young man. Jesus could have gotten off that cross if he chose to, but he willingly stayed there. Likewise, we are required to willingly stay on the altar as a living sacrifice. We're required to be making our lives totally submitted to God, to God's will, to God's way. Now, it becomes easier, it becomes much more palatable when we stop and we look on the real why. Because a major part of the challenge that people have with being a living sacrifice is that they feel as if so much is being asked of them. How often have we heard children of God complaining because they are being required to not do this or do that, or to operate in this way or to think in that way, and it just seems like a burden. It seems like so much, and why it is that I have to do that, and why is it that children of God have to this, and why is it, and why is it, and why is it? And you hear children of God very often talk about the restrictions and etc., etc. And it goes back to the concept we were just addressing. Because when our first point of reference is the call to sacrificial living, it is always going to seem onerous. It is always going to seem hard and too much and too demanding, which is why Paul spent all of 11 chapters delineating, pointing out, showing all the goodness and grace and mercies that God has bestowed upon us. Because it is within that context, it is within an understanding and an appreciation of all of those undeserved blessings that we will then find that living a sacrificial life becomes easy. Because when we think of all that God has done for us, when we think of the fact that we should have been dead, but he gave us life, and not gave us life only, but gave us abundant life and gave us grace and glory when we deserve none of it. When we think of all that he's done for us that we did not deserve, living a sacrificial life now becomes, boy, I wish I could do more. I wish there was more. I'm so happy I have this opportunity just to do this for you. I'd do anything for you after all you've done for me. Unfortunately, that's not the mindset and approach of most children of God, because we start not from the place of how much he has done for us, and therefore this is our response. We start from the response as if that's the starting point, and so it seems like so much is being asked of us. The Lord has done more than save our lives. He's done so much for us that really living a sacrificial life for him is the least we could do. It's the only logical response. But it only feels like that. We only have that motivation when we get that concept I was discussing with you earlier, when we get that concept right. When we understand that what it is that we are being called to do right now is really not supposed to be coming from a place of duty, but it should be coming from a place of gratitude. It should be coming from a place where we recognize and acknowledge the awesome goodness of God in our lives. And so nobody has to beg us to do this, because, Lord, I wish I could do more. And that is the concept.
New Ebenezer Tabernacle Apostolic,
where everyone is a minister and love is real.